I spent the last 3 years of my high school at a small boys boarding school in Western Connecticut. Rural setting, beautiful campus nestled in the hillside, out in the country, a charming New England village a few miles away. In this nice pastoral setting, we read the classics and we studied history, our minds unsullied by the distractions of civilization, and of course, girls. But there was trouble in paradise. And at my senior year, we would be summoned to these anxious meetings by the headmaster who would inform us that, another graduate of the school had dropped out of college. He was worried that we wouldn't be able to make the transition from this nice setting, this monasterial setting, to the kind of rowdy campus atmosphere. I entered Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut in the fall of 1970. Now, to give you a sense of what the atmosphere was like at the time, the previous spring semester had ended early. It was a student strike in protest of the Kent State massacres. The day after the strike began, the Grateful Dead played on campus. And my class, the incoming class of 1974, was the first class to have women admitted as freshmen. Well, my college career started off on a high note. That first night, my roommate John, who was a more worldly fellow than me, had me smoking pot and listening to the Dead. Our resident advisor, Marty, just across the hall, had a supply of psychedelics. And just a few weekends later, I was experiencing my first acid trip, going agog of the spectacular New England fall foliage colors. But meanwhile, my sphere of friends was steadily expanding and had as many women as men. Now, lest you think that having women in your class is a guarantee of romantic success, think again. All the girls I was interested in quickly paired up with upperclassmen who were overjoyed not to have to drive across New England to mixers at other colleges. But, you know, it was kind of neat learning to make friends with women, you know, just as friends instead of objects of romantic interest. And some of these friends, like Wendy and Marcy, I still remain really close with today. Well, I soon learned that the only rule on the campus of Wesleyan was that there were no rules. Students were getting high all over campus. The Middletown police helpfully had little blue lights on top of their patrol cars so you could see them coming a block or two away. Dogs ran all over the place. They had the run of the place, not on leashes. As a freshman, 18-year-old freshman, I could order booze delivered to my dorm room by the local liquor store. So I was beginning to understand what that headmaster was getting worried about. It was a pretty much of a culture shock, you know, going from that quiet little setting to this sprawling marketplace of hedonism. In the midst of this stew of decadence, academics vied for my attention. I started as an astronomy major, but like the other speaker here, I didn't really like the math. But hey, we could smoke joints on the observatory roof during observing sessions. That was pretty cool. But I eventually graduated to geology because rock outcrops don't need equations to tell their stories. I also took Jew's harp, and the final exam for Jew's harp was a live performance on the campus radio station. In cities in space, we were supposed to put our great minds together to design kind of an orbiting biosphere tube in which everyone would live in peace and harmony. I designed the auditorium, which had no seats. You just floated around and listened to rock music. In February of 1971, my friend Lloyd and I, also a classmate, attended our first Grateful Dead concert. It was at a beautiful restored vaudeville theater in Port Chester, New York. Our RA, Marty, the guy across the hall, was our guide. He wore white overalls in which every pocket was stuffed with joints. My roommate, John, went to every single concert, all 6 shows in a row. God knows what he was putting in his bloodstream to stay awake night after night. Well, somehow I survived all those 4 years. I got all my credits. I got my major, finished my major in geology, and as the 4 years was coming to a close, it was time to plan for graduation. Now, the class of '74 had argued over who should be the commencement speaker. Many people were lobbying hard for the mime Marcel Marceau, who of course wouldn't say a word. Well, we finally settled on the more conventional choice of Pauline Kael, the legendary film critic of the New Yorker. Meanwhile, what to wear? Caps and gowns, you say? Ha! We're the class of '74, we never do anything traditional. So the women decided to wear dresses and heels. The women like Wendy and Marcy, and then the men like Lloyd and John wore suits and ties. I thought about it and decided I had no choice. As a personal expression of my amazing time at Wesleyan, I had to wear the costume I had worn at the Halloween dance concert the previous fall. This was a psychedelic toga. It was made out of a single white bed sheet decorated with colored magic markers. It had lightning bolts and spiral galaxies and all sorts of fantastic designs on it. And, you know, I hadn't washed it since then because I was afraid the colors would run. But other than that, it was ready to wear. Now, the only remaining problem was how to break the news about this to my parents and my sister, who were traveling all the way from Illinois to see me graduate, presumably wearing a motorboat. Well, I couldn't think of a strategy, so it would just have to be shock and awe. The night before graduation, Lloyd and I stayed up all night dancing to single tunes on LPs. Now, you remember, this is before CDs and iTunes and playlists and all that stuff. So this involved going over to the record collection, pulling out an album, pulling the record out of the sleeve, placing it on the turntable, carefully placing the needle, that one song you want to dance to, and then when the song was over, taking the needle off, putting the record back, getting out the other, on and on, all night long, all while dancing and drinking and smoking. I'm proud to say we didn't put a single scratch on any of our housemate Jason's records. Well, the big day dawned, overcast and drizzly. I sat in a metal folding chair out in the middle of the baseball field and shivered in my psychedelic toga with zero sleep, trying to make sense of what Pauline Kael was saying. Then it was time to get the diplomas. Grateful Dead music played softly in the background as my classmates went up. I counted 8 dogs that made the trip up to the podium with their owners, this time finally on leashes, some of them gaily decorated. Then it was my turn. I went up there, and you know the expression on Charlie Brown's face, that one of puzzlement, where he has that kind of zigzag mouth? That's precisely the expression on the college president's face as he handed me my diploma. I gave him a big smile. Now, fortunately, my family was far enough away so I couldn't see the expression on their faces. But I found out later my sister had filmed the whole thing on a Super 8 camera. But I also guarantee you that film never saw the light of a projector. Well, the ceremony was over, and it was finally time to face my family and hear their opinions about my outrageous graduation garb. But as I was heading back to my dorm to change, a miracle occurred. My classmate Dean came up to me and gave me a bronze plaque. Well, it turns out Dean was a member of a secret society on campus called the Mystical Seven. And this award was for unrecognized service to the community. Really? He said, oh, I got it because I had the guts to graduate in a psychedelic toga. I really suspect that the society kind of spaced out making the choice of who to give it to and had to make this decision at the last second. However, when it finally went go out to lunch with my parents and sister, before they had a chance to open their mouths and utter a word about their disappointment about the ceremony, I was thrust this bronze plaque at them and said, "Look, Mom, Dad, and Sis, a bronze plaque, soon to have my name engraved on it." I think it mollified their feelings a little bit. So what did I get out of it 4 years? Well, I'm sure I could have learned more, right? But I'll tell you, it was a truly formative experience. And my classmates agree. We all get together on campus every 5 years and talk about those days. Thank you.